One by one, they presented evidence that Karen's violations were based on misreadings, misunderstandings, or simple mistakes. Not malice. Just a woman so focused on finding problems that she had stopped seeing solutions. Derek appeared in the doorway behind his mother, his uniform wrinkled from the long shift. "Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Martinez, everyone, thank you for coming. But maybe we should let Mom rest." "No," Karen said quietly, her voice barely audible. "Let them speak." Margaret arrived last, official HOA documentation in hand. "Karen, I'm sorry, but the board met in emergency session. Given the complaints and the incidents today, we've decided to suspend your enforcement privileges pending a full review." The words should have devastated her. Instead, Karen felt something unexpected: relief. The crushing weight of maintaining perfection in a world determined to be imperfect suddenly lifted from her shoulders. "I'm sorry," Karen said, and meant it. "I thought I was protecting our neighborhood, but I was just trying to control something. Anything." She looked at each neighbor, really seeing them for the first time in months. "I lost my husband 2 years ago, and I guess I thought if I could keep everything else from changing, from falling apart." Janet Morrison stepped forward and did something remarkable. She handed Karen the ceramic gnome. "Harold gave me this when we moved in 15 years ago," she said. "He said it would help our house feel like home." That's what neighborhoods are supposed to be, Karen. Homes, not museums. Karen accepted the gnome, its ceramic surface warm from Janet's hands. 7.5 inches of pure, imperfect joy. As the neighbors dispersed, Derek lingered on the porch. "You know, Mom, my captain's been looking for someone to help coordinate community outreach programs. Someone who understands regulations, but also cares about people. Someone who knows how to get things done." Karen looked up at her son, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. Not just as Derek the paramedic, but as the little boy who used to run through sprinklers while she watched and smiled. "Do you think I could learn to smile again?" she asked. Derek grinned, and Karen saw her own eyes reflected in his face. "I think you already have." As the sun set over the neighborhood, Karen Whitmore sat on her front porch, holding Harold Morrison's garden gnome, and watching the Henderson girls slip and slide dry in the evening air. Tomorrow, she would call Margaret about the community outreach position. Tomorrow, she would help instead of hinder. But tonight, she noticed something that made her pause. The Williams family's tire swing was swaying slightly in the breeze, and from her angle on the porch, she couldn't quite tell if the rope was properly secured to the branch. Karen's hand twitched toward her measuring tape, then stopped. She smiled, genuinely smiled, and decided that some things were perfect just as they were. Almost. The tire swing could probably use a safety inspection, just to be sure. Old habits, after all, die hard. Karen Whitmore had exactly 17 seconds to process 3 catastrophic developments before her world imploded. First, she watched through her kitchen window as her neighbor's illegal hot pink flamingo pool float bobbed mockingly in their backyard pool. Second, her phone buzzed with a text from HOA President Margaret saying Karen's complaint about the Johnson family's wind chimes had been dismissed as frivolous. Third, and most shocking of all, she spotted an actual ambulance parked in her pristinely maintained driveway, not for an emergency, but because her son Derek, a paramedic, had the audacity to bring his work vehicle home for lunch. "Absolutely not," Karen shrieked, bursting through her front door like a woman possessed. Her perfectly coiffed blonde bob trembled with rage as she confronted Derek, who was calmly eating a sandwich on her porch. "You cannot park that eyesore on my property. Do you have any idea what this does to our property values?" Derek looked up from his turkey club, exhaustion evident in his eyes. "Mom, I've been working a double shift. I just need 20 minutes too. 20 minutes too long." Karen's voice reached a pitch that made nearby dogs howl. The HOA covenant clearly states that commercial vehicles are prohibited in residential driveways. Section 4.27. It's an ambulance, Mom. I save lives. And I save this neighborhood from chaos. Karen was already speed dialing Margaret, her manicured nails kicking against her phone screen like tiny daggers. When the call went to voicemail, she felt her left eye begin to twitch, a sure sign that someone was about to face the full force of her HOA authority. But Karen's attention was immediately diverted by the sight of her next-door neighbor, Janet Morrison, stepping out to water her supposedly compliant garden. The woman had the nerve to wave cheerfully, completely oblivious to the fact that her garden gnome was 3 inches taller than the HOA's decorative ornament height restriction. Janet. Karen marched across her lawn with military precision, clipboard materializing in her hand as if by magic. "We need to discuss your garden gnome situation. Again." Janet's smile faltered. "Karen, we've been over this. The gnome is within regulations." "By whose measurements?" Karen whipped out a metal ruler, her unofficial weapon of choice. "I'll be conducting a surprise inspection. Right now." Derek watched from the porch, sandwich forgotten, as his mother crouched beside a ceramic gnome with a measuring tape, muttering HOA bylaws under her breath. This was the woman who had raised him, who used to kiss his scraped knees and make him chocolate chip cookies. Now she was 3 seconds away from writing up the elderly woman next door for gnome infractions. The transformation had been gradual. After Dad died 2 years ago, Mom had thrown herself into HOA duties with frightening intensity. What started as neighborhood pride had morphed into something darker, a need to control every blade of grass, every paint color, every decorative choice within a 3-block radius. "Aha!" Karen's victorious cry echoed across the subdivision. 7 3/4 inches. The maximum allowable height is 7.5 inches. Janet's face crumpled. "Karen, please. Harold gave me that gnome for our anniversary. It's been in the same spot for 15 years. Rules are rules, Janet. The gnome goes, or you'll be facing a formal citation and potential fines." Karen's clipboard was already out, pen poised like a sword. "You have 48 hours to achieve compliance." As Karen stalked back toward her house, she noticed something that made her blood pressure spike to dangerous levels. The Hendersons' teenage daughter was setting up a slip and slide in their backyard, without proper permits or advance notification to the Architectural Review Committee. This was war. By noon, Karen had issued 6 formal violations, made 17 phone calls to the HOA hotline, and consumed enough coffee to power a small aircraft. Her kitchen counter was covered with printouts of neighborhood infractions. The Martinez family's unapproved mailbox paint job, the Chen's excessive holiday decorations, still up from Christmas in August, and the Williams family's structurally unsound tire swing that was clearly a liability nightmare waiting to happen. Derek had long since retreated to his ambulance, speaking quietly into his radio about emergency calls while shooting concerned glances at his mother through the window. Karen noticed his worried expression and felt a flicker of something, guilt, maybe? But quickly squashed it. This was about maintaining standards, about preserving what made their neighborhood special. Her phone rang, and Margaret's name flashed on the screen. "Karen, I've received 14 complaints about you today." 14. Before lunch. Margaret's usually patient voice carried an edge of exhaustion. "Mrs. Rodriguez is threatening to move because you measured her flower bed with a surveyor's level. Accuracy is crucial, Margaret. We can't let property lines blur just because people get emotional about their petunias." "Karen, listen to me carefully. You need to take a step back. The neighborhood is in an uproar. People are talking about calling for a vote of no confidence." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. A vote of no confidence. Against her? She who had single-handedly prevented the neighborhood from descending into decorative anarchy. "They don't understand," Karen whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Without standards, without rules, everything falls apart. Look at what happened to Maple Grove subdivision. Pink houses, boats in driveways, children's toys scattered everywhere like some kind of suburban wasteland." But Karen had already hung up. Through her window, she could see Janet Morrison sitting on her porch steps, holding the ceramic gnome in her lap like a lost child. The sight should have filled Karen with satisfaction. Compliance achieved. Instead, it made her stomach twist uncomfortably. That's when she spotted the Henderson girl, now fully engaged in slip and slide activities with what appeared to be half the neighborhood kids. Their laughter carried across the yards, mixing with the sound of splashing water and pure, uninhibited joy. Karen found herself staring, memories surfacing unbidden of Derek at that age, running through sprinklers while she watched from the kitchen window, smiles spreading across her face. When had she stopped smiling? The question caught her off guard, and in that moment of vulnerability, Karen made a decision that would change everything. She was going to march over to the Henderson house and put a stop to this unpermitted water activity once and for all. No more Mrs. Nice Guy. No more wondering about smiles or memories or guilt. She grabbed her clipboard, her measuring tape, and her official HOA violation forms. But as she stepped outside, disaster struck in the form of her 3-inch heels meeting her garden hose, which Derek had apparently moved while washing his ambulance. Karen went down hard, arms flailing, clipboard flying, violation forms scattering across her lawn like oversized confetti. She landed in a heap beside her prize-winning rose bushes, soil staining her cream-colored pantsuit, dignity nowhere to be found. The neighborhood kids had stopped playing to stare. Janet Morrison was standing at her fence, the gnome still clutched in her arms. Derek was running from the ambulance, his face a mask of concern and barely suppressed panic. But what broke Karen's heart wasn't the embarrassment or the ruined outfit or even the fact that her carefully maintained lawn was now decorated with official HOA documentation. It was the look in Derek's eyes, not anger or frustration, but pure, exhausted sadness. "Mom," he said softly, kneeling beside her in the dirt, "what happened to you?" As Karen lay there among her scattered papers and wounded pride, she realized she didn't have an answer. Karen spent the next 3 hours sitting in her pristine living room, still in her soil-stained pantsuit, staring at the pile of violation forms Derek had collected from her lawn. Each paper represented a neighbor, a family, a life she had tried to control. The Henderson girls' slip and slide had been packed away after witnessing Karen's spectacular fall, and the neighborhood had returned to an eerie quiet that felt less like compliance and more like fear. The doorbell rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. Karen opened it to find Janet Morrison standing on her porch, still holding the ceramic gnome. "I measured it myself," Janet said without preamble. Harold's gnome, with 6 different rulers and measuring tape, and even that surveyor's level I'd borrowed from my nephew. She paused, studying Karen's face with surprising gentleness. "It's exactly 7.5 inches tall. Has been for 15 years. Karen felt heat rise in her cheeks. That's not possible. I measured it myself." "You measured it at an angle, dear. From your position crouched beside my flower bed, looking up." Janet's voice held no malice, only tired understanding. Sometimes perspective changes everything. Before Karen could respond, more neighbors began appearing on her doorstep. The Martinez family with their illegal mailbox paint, which turned out to be the exact shade of blue approved in Section 12.4 of the HOA guidelines. The Chen family with documentation proving their holiday decorations were well within the seasonal display timeframe. The Williams family with an engineering report confirming their tire swing's structural integrity.